MOvember 2020. I'm reading tonight from the Tower Fully Feeling for day 17, working my way through dissociation and its different sort of characteristics. Tonight's on obsessiveness. If my heart could do my thinking and my head begin to feel, I'd look upon the world with love and know what is truly real. And that was Van Morrison from I Forgot That Love Existed. Many adult children use obsessiveness, excessive mental preoccupation, to defend against painful feelings. Many of us become habituated to obsessive thinking in childhood in order to distract ourselves from feeling the hostility and lack of love in our families. The most common form of obsessiveness, one that often passes as functional, is non-stop thinking. Obsessives are overbound to left brain processes and inordinately consumed by their thinking. Many intellectuals are little more than sophisticated obsessives. Constant cognition renders them so feelingless that they match their boring and wearisome stereotype. Completely removed from their hearts and souls, they are without passion and less personally engaging than computers. How awful that our culture automatically deems intellectual accomplishment evidence of an evolved state of consciousness. In this excerpt from his autobiography, Charles Darwin laments about the fallacy of this evaluation. My mind seems to have become a kind of machine for grinding general laws out of a large collections of fact. But why this should have caused an atrophy of that part of the brain alone, on which higher tastes depend, I cannot conceive. The loss of these tastes is a loss of happiness and may possibly be injurious to the intellect and more probably to the moral character by enfeebling the emotional part of our nature. I do not mean to imply here that intellectualism is always a defensive or limitation. Intellectuals with intact emotional natures like John Bradshaw and Joseph Campbell are a joy to behold. Similarly, geniuses like Einstein and Newton obsessed on matters of profound significance and made great contributions to humanity without sacrificing their diverse appreciation of life. Unfortunately, these few seem to be the exception and not the rule. All too many academics and scientists hurt themselves and diminish their lives and their families' lives by over-focusing on mental processes. Strangers to heartfelt self-expression, they typically suffer great loneliness because they cannot connect emotionally with others. A most extreme form of obsessiveness is ritualized repetition of the same thought. As a young Catholic boy, I relied heavily on the distraction that came from chronic obsession. Mary, Jesus, and Joseph, pray for me. When I was particularly anxious, when my forbidden rage or tears were stirring just below the consciousness, I silently chanted this over and over for hours. I believe many, certainly not all, forms of prayer are little more than obsessive defenses against feeling. The anxious, constant repetition of scripture or mantra is often unwittingly used to drive off the demons of emotion. The most prevalent self-destructive form of obsession is worry. At its most intense, it manifests as the catastrophizing and drasticizing described in the last chapter. Many obsessives have menus of issues that they worry about, recycling them over and over in various combinations. A mind busy wondering where Johnny is or when the earthquake is coming is distracted from deeper pain. The author of an idle mind is the devil's workshop. Must have been some poor obsessive who was shamed into thinking that his underlying feelings were manifestations of hell. Ironically, it is the perpetual rejection of feelings that creates the seemingly hellish internal conditions that many of us desperately defend against. Obsessive worrying is a self-perpetuating process. In one of my worst phases of obsessing, I worried that I was not worrying enough whenever my perseverating briefly abated. Going to the opposite extreme in early recovery, I frequently worried that I worried too much, and I was like Calvin, the cartoon character, who, when caught in an exitless maze of worry, exclaimed, "My brain is trying to kill me." Obsessive worry is only exitless, however, if we are searching for a thinking way out of it. Healthy alleviation from worry comes primarily from descending into the feeling realms and grieving out the emotional pain that fuels obsession. When we worry inordinately, it is as if our unfelt, watery feelings of hurt are vaporizing and rising into the airy mental realms where they smudge our thoughts with painful perspectives. Worry goes on and on and on because vaporization is such a slow and ineffective way of processing liquid-like emotions. Painful emotions need the water of tears to be resolved. Tears instantly halt obsession by releasing the mercurial fear that runs rampant throughout the drasticizing mind. The habit of obsessive worrying must be broken because we live in a world so troublesome we will never run out of things to worry about. Unrelenting worry will not only distract us from our feelings, but also from sleep, relaxation, play, relating, and the maintenance of our everyday affairs. If we do not grieve and begin to break the habit of obsessing, we risk becoming like the old man described by Winston Churchill, who reached the end of his life and in a terrible epiphany exclaimed, "All the terrible things in my life never actually happened." Healthy obsessiveness. Obsessiveness, like the other key defenses, is healthy in moderation. Prolonged periods of concentrated thinking are obviously invaluable for certain tasks. We couldn't learn to read or write without obsessing on language. Our lives would be greatly impoverished if we did not spend a good deal of time reasoning, analyzing, introspecting, and philosophizing. Thinking can be a joy when it is not merely a distraction from feeling. Many real-life issues require perseverating mental focus for healthy solutions. Creative worry is a term I've coined to describe the prolonged analysis of a complex issue of choice. If I find myself reeling from my third successive betrayal in a relationship, it will behoove me to spend a great deal of time thinking about the nuances of my relationship history. Similarly, if I am offered a job in another part of the country, I will probably need to enduringly ponder a host of pros and cons relating to the potential move. In early recovery, we may also need to obsess about how to communicate our feelings. There is usually a great deal of consideration involved in learning to express upset feelings healthily. Prolonged contemplation often helps us discern whether our hurt comes from the past or present, and whether our feelings should be released on our own or expressed directly to whomever they concern. Wisdom is the most important decisions of life. Sometimes only comes from weeks or months of thoroughly examining all our options. And of course, in matters of great import, healthy conclusions and decisions usually ensue from weighing all of our thoughts and feelings about a given issue. The therapeutic cul-de-sac of over-analyzing obsessions. The content of obsessions is often given too much attention and importance by both clients and psychotherapists. It is the actual process of obsessing, not the content of our obsessions, that is frequently the most relevant issue in recovery. When we focus exclusively on the details of our obsessions rather than on the underlying emotional pain that causes them, we often do little more than increase our overall obsessiveness. While it would be absurd to say that the content is never important, chronic obsessives must learn to shift the focus of their unaware awareness away from their heads and into their body-based emotional experiences. Unfortunately, this proposition often sounds both preposterous and unthinkable to many obsessives. When I was first advised to drop my awareness into my belly, into my gut level feelings, I thought to myself, what is this guy talking about? Awareness is something that is exclusively in my head and brain. What is this gut level feeling nonsense? He's got to be kidding. Nonetheless, as an ex-world-class obsessive, I know that obsession-bound survivors can find out firsthand about these mysterious things called feelings. The technique for enhancing feeling described in Chapter 5 has helped many of my clients connect with their feelings. If you still seem to be stuck in your head after trying this technique, you may need the assistance of a therapist who specializes in emotional recovery. Therapists use a variety of emotional release techniques to help survivors drop down from their obsessive minds into their feelings. Reiking therapy, biogenetics, bioenergetics, gestalt exercises, rebirthing, and rose and body work are some of the most proven of these techniques. In dealing with the vestiges of my own obsessiveness, I still occasionally catch myself in my childhood obsessions of choice, rapidly repeating, counting to 10. I sometimes added compulsiveness to this by walking around for hours trying to find license plates with pairs of numbers that added up to 10. Now that I know that counting is one of my obsessive defenses against feeling, I immediately assume that I have gone unconscious to an emotional upset when I find myself mindlessly counting. If I focus my awareness deep inside myself at such times and ask myself the question, what hurts? I invariably discover that I have once again stuffed my feelings. When I then drop down and fully feel or emote my repressed feelings, my obsessing typically ceases. This same approach commonly brings me relief when I catch myself obsessing excessively about world tragedies and impending calamities over which I have no control. When I grieve compassionately for the plight of the downtrodden and the world itself, unproductive worry ceases, and I usually return to an appreciation of life. Grieving also helps me gain a realistic perspective on how much I can healthily do to help others without taking on a grandiose responsibility for everyone who needs healing in the world. The first time grieving brought me significant relief from my chronic obsessing, I was struck by a startling internal image. I saw myself being released from long-term captivity in a room with a phonograph record, stuck in a groove, bleating out the same refrain over and over. What tremendous relief in my escape, as the refrain that had been incessantly hammering me was the most maudlin country and western song imaginable. So we will dip into compulsives tomorrow. This is from the Tower Fully Feeling. Thank you. There's been some donations on the MOvember page. It's for men's health. So be gentle with your heart and travel well in your recovery. Reach out to your allies. Get the support you need. And I look forward to doing a video tomorrow.